I don't think it's a big secret that Saryn is one of the best frames in the game, only outclassed by like Octavia because of how boring her playstyle is. And the reason she's really good is because they buffed her with green corrosion shards, but they also buffed her because they changed how armor stripping works, so technically you don't even need them anymore, because you don't need to fully armor strip or anything like that if that's your cup of tea. But also she works in all kinds of missions, mainly because she's one of the best gun buff platforms there are, with a combination of the fact that Toxic Lash does not count as a buff, so you can run Venom Dose, which gives you corrosion damage, Toxic Lash, which gives you toxin, and then your flavor of like Zada's Whisper Roar, making her one of the strongest frames in the game. And that's pretty much full stop. You can't really AFK with her, especially with how strong they've made her. It's very difficult to manage that. But, Kuva Sobek is good, and I should make a video on that because of acid shells. As you just saw, everybody just exploded and killed each other, which is very cool. The whole spores build doesn't really work that well on like exterminate and stuff where there are distance between enemies, mainly just because it requires a good spread range and sometimes enemies just won't spawn in fast enough. Hell, even in like survival and disruption missions, there is a high chance that you will just not have enemies spawn in fast enough. I've had multiple disruption, like even like void fissure disruption runs where I will start decaying stacks. It also doesn't really work on arbitration. Arbitration drones like overshield them from status effects, all the targets that they are like connected to, so you just don't get as much value out of her there as well. However, we'll just change this over. The build obviously is super malleable as long as you just have like some decent strength and an absurd range. Pretty much any of this is fine. I'm running Dreamer's Bond because I'm lazy. Molt efficiency because I just want the duration above 90%. Molt augmented because it's one of the best arcanes in my opinion. That can be debated amongst the forum page, I guess. Equilibrium, stretch, prime continuity, flow, though this can be changed off. It's not really that big of a deal. I just have it because I just prefer it. It could be used with like anything else. Rolling guard, overextended, blind rage, fleeting expertise. This Archon continuity does not work on her. I know a lot of people were talking about it, trying to discuss it. Because Toxic Lash is not an ability of applying toxin, it does not work, which is very funny because a lot of people pointed out, then why is she the one on the cover page? So unfortunately this just does not work. Her augments aren't even that bad. I mean, regenerative molt, which I don't have molt on this build, is super good. Why do I have Savage Light? What? I don't know what I was doing here. Is really good, mainly because molt is also just a pretty good ability, though sometimes if an enemy is launching an explosion on you, will just get you killed. And Venom Dose, which is in this hit big build, grants 100% corrosion damage, so this is more sent up for Roar, Toxic Lash, Venom Dose. We have Fleeting Expertise, Argo Secrets, Rolling Guard, Primed Continuity, Venom Dose, Blind Rage, Equilibrium, Stretch, and then your flavor of Aura. This basically allows you to use a lot of various weapons, especially if you don't have like tons and tons of good viable weapons. I mean, come on. Kuva Sobek got released. Acid Shells was a notable, hey, ain't that a little bit strong on her before this, but now with it, I mean, it just cleans house, and that's with barely any interaction. Obviously, this can still be used to spread spores. It's not that big of a deal if you do, but the range is super limited, so you're not going to get as much value. Plus, you're just better off popping all of the abilities and just swinging everything. Saryn's one of the strongest frames in the game. Just multi-leveled builds. Octavia is pretty simple. You just kind of run at enemies with her 1 and 3, and you just stand there going invis all the time. She's honestly in the worst spot for her frame. She was so boring that everybody adapted the worst playstyle for her, and that's all you see, which is unfortunate, but hey, that's what happens when a frame is built off of the ground like that. So yeah, obviously this works with a ton of weapons. I'm just using the Kuva Sobek because I think it's neat. Even other weapons will absolutely benefit because of the double dipping of roar, the combination of, obviously this is a very energy absorption build, that's why we have equilibrium. But yeah, this is also just a testament of how strong the Kuva Sobek is, to be fair. One of my favorite Kuva weapons I just don't use because it's a little unreliable and unhandy compared to others, I mean. But no, she's extremely strong. I do run shards on her. Stacks of corrosion, ability damage on enemies afflicted, which does scale her insanely fast. And again, a lot of the time you're just going to end up actually demolishing enemies. So where does she get? Disruption survival for blight. Like blight, by that I mean like spores and stuff like that. It does kind of fall off during exterminates. Spies, obviously, though on spy you're probably just going to blaze through it anyway. None of the really complicated missions are a spy mission. Just nothing like endless. That's where she starts to fall off, which is unfortunate. But also then you just shift over to a roar, toxic lash, corrosion, venom dose build, and you pretty much just clean house. I mean, it amplifies your damage so much by just all of the different modifiers and the double dipping faction damage of roar, so you just go crazy, which covers the rest of her bases. Defense you can kind of get away with. Interception you can kind of get away with on the spore build, but you can also just, it just comes down to personal preference. Would you like to rebuild your stacks every wave, or would you like to have a consistent build? Also, I run Dispensary, mainly because Dispensary is quite literally one of the strongest subsumable abilities, and I love to spam miasma, because I am that kind of dude. So, yeah, Saryn's insanely strong, and I know Tenacon just happened, so a lot of people probably just got her for free, which is good, because she should be one of those that sit in your arsenal until you're like, I want to use an overpowered frame and kind of like turn my brain off. That is an Octavia. I want to have like some brain activity, like at least one electromagnetic pulse up here, like per second maybe, you know. So yeah, there's not really much to say other than what people have already said. She's insanely strong. There you go. Interactions though, I should mention one. Toxic Lash deals double damage. Wait, what? Are you not the one I scored? Am I insane? Oh, I never used Toxic Lash. I'm dumb. Toxic Lash deals double damage when used with melee weapons, which, I mean, is fine. It's not really that big of a deal. Especially because there's just better melee options out there. Kalervo's and most of his kit, like Wrathful Advance and stuff like that. It's not that big of a deal. It will immediately burst spores if I can not mess this up. Like I'm Decay, I have one. There we go, everybody's infected. So there you go. And also Miasma has its own independent multiplier for spore damage. So that's also a good thing to keep in mind. Other than that, there's not really any hidden tech. I mean, she's a pretty old frame. So there's not like, oh, using this weapon or anything like that. No, her kit is entirely consolidated to herself. You could feasibly do an entire run of something using the armor strip component and not even using a weapon. You could pretty much just AFK jump around, make sure you just don't go down. And obviously the scaling of Molt Augmented makes her insane. Just be careful if you start decaying, because sometimes in late missions, you'll just never come back from it. It hurts.